once Title 42 expires.
Expulsions of migrants is set to expire in just 4 days, and U.S. cities along the southern border are bracing for a possible mass influx of migrants. The Biden administration is sending 1,500 active duty troops to the border to help prepare for the possible crisis. And today, Biden's Homeland Security Secretary defended the administration's preparedness, but urged patience.
Tonight, with Title 42 expiring in just a few hours, concern is spreading across the country as officials are bracing for a rise in border crossings and a worry that there's not enough resources to handle the rush.
Republican governors Greg Abbott of Texas and Doug Ducey of Arizona, both fierce critics of Biden's immigration policies, began sending migrants to the nation's capital earlier this year.
Who is responsible for this migrant influx?
I don't think anything is more anti-American than shipping people on a bus, 45-hour trip, without any of the basic needs that they have of direction or coordination.
A political battle over immigration is spewing between Governor Greg Abbott and Mayor Eric Adams. But Mayor Adams says any migrant who arrives here in the city and needs help will get it.
I wondered, given some of the president's rhetoric on the campaign trail and as president and some of the policies that he instituted, including rolling back some of the immigration policies of the Trump era, is he concerned at all that some of his rhetoric and some of his policies may have, as well-intentioned as they may have been, inadvertently contributed to the rise in migrants that we're seeing at the border?
The U.S. is about to lift the COVID-19 restriction on Thursday night. Title 42, which was placed into existence by Donald Trump, won't be renewed by the Biden administration. Many U.S. residents didn't realize that for the last 3 years, border agents were allowed to expel many migrants caught crossing the border back to Mexico. Once Title 42 expires, the original Title 8 will be reborn, this time with new stringent rules for asylum seekers. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said that the order was needed to stem the spread of the coronavirus in crowded detention settings. Now that we know that COVID isn't completely gone, the extension of Title 42 may have been a good idea.
Yeah, Steve, people in this neighborhood are still pretty upset. You can see the tent right behind me. It's supposed to be able to house up to 1,000 single adult men, asylum seekers who are new to this country. But the residents in this community are upset. They want this shelter moved to someone else's neighborhood.
In Queens, New York, residents are infuriated that migrants have been brought into their neighborhoods without their permission. Some residents shout and taunt the migrants as they enter and leave the shelter. Police barricades and security guards are working countless hours to protect the migrants.
A crisis that is created nationally, we're looking at a local city to solve it. Is that what you're trying to say to me?
Not vetted. We don't know who they are. We have a school here, elementary school, right there.
And the residents are frustrated.
Earlier this week, White House officials held a briefing and said that the city is not doing a good enough job of tracking migrants and their asylum claims.
New York City is unique. Unlike other places, they are legally obligated to provide shelter to people who need it.
So we're over 200 languages here in New York City now. And that number has grown as this asylum crisis has grown with us.
So I got to ask you, how does that affect the other kids in the class? who are up to speed and ready to learn.
And this is why our teachers and our school staffs are so great. What they figure out quickly is who do they have to move into a certain place where they have to get them different types of services. And then what you do is you find out children who can communicate with each other, and you teach children how to help each other and help them assimilate.
Grim news for parents. Budget cuts ordered by Mayor Adams to pay for asylum seekers could affect every school and every program.
The question still being debated amongst lawmakers is how do we reach this point and where do we go from here?
Right behind me was a location where migrants repeatedly tried to enter the United States illegally. And there was only one thing that caused them to not enter illegally. And that's because of the Texas National Guard, the Texas Department of Public Safety, building the barriers that were needed to prevent people from entering, and then having the personnel behind those barriers to ensure that no one would enter. As far as I know, it's the first time in American history that a state has led the effort to prevent people from entering the United States illegally. Let's be clear. That's the job and the responsibility of Joe Biden and the federal government.
The migrant crisis has caught many Americans by surprise. Many of us did not understand the complexity, cost, and violence we would face due to this crisis. The American government seems to be in an endless battle of finger-pointing. The truth at this point about who caused the issue must not overshadow the need for all Republicans and Democrats to work together for a solution. During my research, I believed that New York was having the most issues with migrants, but further investigation proved that almost every state is feeling the struggle. Many residents feel that allowing unvetted migrants into the cities is a safety issue. In New York, we see Mayor Adams trying to utilize public schools and tents in open lots, which frustrates the residents. In New York City, there is a migrant crisis. The influx of migrants over the past year has devolved into a full-fledged crisis, overwhelming the city's shelters, schools, and other resources and straining relations with the Biden administration and New York City. This migrant issue may cause the Democrats a problem with winning the upcoming presidency. Why is the Biden administration focusing on just New York City? Is it because Mayor Eric Adams is calling out the president? Every state needs federal government involvement because the citizens are in uproar and are blaming their local politicians. We've got a big mess here. This migrant issue can financially break the United States. One can only imagine if this outbreak of migrants is a plot to destroy the United States. A concerning question is why there was no temporary stay order of Title 42. COVID has decreased but is far from over. Other potential diseases we are unaware of could be spreaded due to the influx of migrants in the U.S. Every deserves a fair shot at a better life. What about the homeless population before this outbreak? Many U.S. citizens have died on the street because they became unemployed or by another life event that forced them to become homeless. Where was our local government then? Where was their help? What about our educational concerns? What about the safety of the U.S. citizens living in these neighborhoods around people you have yet to learn of their background? When you move into a community, you may not know your neighbors. Still, in most cases, you can look up public information on pedophiles and other dangerous criminals living in the area. These migrants have not been vetted. This is a continuous theme from the protesters.
Immigration has been a constant issue even before Ellis Island was built. Ellis Island Station was developed so immigrants could be vetted and helped. Ellis Island Station is a place where more than 12 million immigrants have come through. This is not the only place where immigrants entered into the United States, but it did process around 70% of them. Many immigrants come to the United States trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. 1907 was a big year for the immigration boom. More than 2.3 million migrants entered the U.S. via Ellis Island Station. Ellis Island allowed many people to track their family's entry into the United States. For some, Ellis Island is the only record they will find about their family history. Ellis Island was opened in 1892 and served for more than 60 years before it closed in 1954. Even though Ellis Island Station closed as an immigration station, it still exists today and is a very important historical landmark.
Ellis Island. It's been shut down for 14 years, but for 51 years before that it was called the Golden Door.
In the decade between 1900 and 1910, a wave of immigrants reaches tidal proportions. More than 8 million leave the old world, fleeing the age-old specters of hunger and persecution, determined to carve a better existence. No hand is too small or too old to stitch gloves, fashion paper flowers. Sustained through toil, they will find their dwindling faith restored. As they rebuild their dreams, they are shaping the destiny of America as well. Laboring in sweatshops for 6 cents an hour, their skilled hands are creating the largest clothing industry in the world.
Many immigrants have come to the United States for a better life. This life includes being able to work and eat 3 full meals a day. Many of their countries have famine. Some of their countries do not allow them freedom of religion. As Americans, many of us have been living our entire lives with the freedom to choose. And with this title, we can choose what we do, where we work, who we marry, and what religion to practice. Imagine being unable to support our families. In America, women are equal to men in every way. Now imagine living in a country where women are not equal and are subservient to men. The problem with our current administration is that they were ill-prepared to handle this type of migrant influx. But this is a common occurrence. Some politicians said the government has failed them. But aren't they themselves members of the government? Did we not vote for them to be our representation? Immigrants for years have been coming to the United States. The difference is that there were places like Ellis Island. Why are we not prepared for this? Because every politician believes that this is the responsibility of someone else. 1882. Chinese exclusion ACT was created to stop the influx of Chinese immigrants. But it appears the influx was to allow for European migrants and U.S. citizens to compete for the jobs currently being done by the Chinese immigrant workers.
Because of language problems, they have to do menial labor for low wages to support their families, instead of utilizing the skills they were trained for. They are frustrated and their talents are being wasted. Chinese immigrants in the 19th century provided the labor to build the American West. Chinese developed large shrimp and abalone industries in the Bay Area. In 1880, Chinese fishermen shipped 1 million pounds of dried shrimp to China and Japan. They worked in the salmon industries of Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. By 1870, they provided 75 to 90% of California's agricultural force. As anti-Chinese sentiment grew, the environment became increasingly hostile, and San Francisco's Chinatown became an important refuge for Chinese workers. Workers in the 1880s produced cigars, shoes, and garments. But only the garment trade exists in Chinatown today. These shops produce close to half the total volume of garments manufactured in San Francisco. Women in the shops work 6 days a week, up to 10 hours a day, yet 70% of the shops pay less than the minimum wage.
Twelfth District Chicago police officers about 6:20 this morning dealing with an increasingly tense situation, taking 2 alleged offenders into custody, police sources identifying the offenders as migrants. News Affairs calling the individuals in question offenders. The first individual allegedly taking property from the district, attempting to flee, we're told, while a second migrant allegedly battered a responding officer who sustained minor injuries, police. 2 other violent or threatening incidents reported yesterday involving 12th District migrants, according to sources, raising concern about what appears to be an untenable situation.
One man, Tyrone Muhammad, an ex-offender who is against the measure, police removed him from the meeting. Longtime Chicagoans say it is difficult to watch leaders suddenly come up with $51 million for new immigrants when Chicago neighborhoods remain underserved.
It should not be
housed in impoverished and marginalized black and brown communities where we have food shortages and homelessness.
I don't know if you've actually talked to these refugees who come here, but what they need are homes and jobs, the same that the people who live here need as well.
How dare this mayor and city council have the guts to give migrants $51 million. I demand you to have the same passion and urgency to pass the City of Chicago reparations order.
Recently arrived families are sleeping on the floors of police stations with nowhere to go. We know that Chicago is not living up to its values.
At dawn, the migrants covered in blankets stretch for blocks. And tonight, El Paso is under a state of emergency because city officials say they don't have enough resources to handle this. Are you desperate? I'm very desperate, Maria Ángel from Venezuela tells us, next to her 10-year-old daughter. I don't have anything to eat. I don't have anywhere to sleep, she says. Desperation as migrants here scramble for food and water. We were here several months ago, and there appear to be many more migrants now. The difference is striking. This group extends all the way around this church for several city blocks.
It's a bad situation for the migrants. It's a bad situation for us. Fingers are pointing, and we need a reasonable address from the president. Soon, survival will kick in, and we may have a possible revolution. Every state has the same problem. There is no affordable housing for residents. How are these migrants going to come and hope to get a job? How are they going to get an apartment? This situation is more than just a mess. It is affecting the safety and emotional state of an entire nation. We have people sleeping on the streets in every state. How do we explain this? What happens when the temperatures drop? What happens when there are hurricanes? Natural disasters? Who is responsible for this mess? Why are we fighting with each other? The situation is unfair. The situation here could have been avoided. Now, the problem is right at our doorstep. Residents are complaining about migrants. Cities have no choice but to try and help these individuals. Those who want to help don't have the means. Those who have the means are ignoring the problem because it's not affecting them. Regardless of who these people are, or where they came from, they are human beings who came here for a better life. It's too late. They cannot take the journey back. Many barely made it to the United States with their lives. We have many places where land is in abundance. Why is the government not looking to buy farmland? North Carolina and many other states have undeveloped land for sale. These people are not going anywhere, so we must pitch in. If we can put our prejudices aside for a day, we can think about how to resolve this issue. The politicians are fighting. Dems versus Republicans. The people are going to be the ones to resolve this issue. If we don't, violence due to hunger and frustration will erupt in our streets. We have seen from the recent clip how migrants are fighting at a food truck. Imagine what happens when that food truck is not there. What happens when the churches run out of resources? What happens when the Good Samaritans get tired of donating food? People's need to survive will take over. What happens when the border becomes too dangerous to be manned? Millions have passed, and when it's closed, people who have traveled thousands of miles and lost their loved ones can't enter. They will fight to pass. Title 42 was not only protecting us from disease. Title 42 protected us from this migrant issue that we now see before us. Calculations by our current administration have failed us. The administration must reevaluate their decision, and we must close the border before it's too late. The United States is in a state of emergency. States like New York, Chicago, and Texas will crumble at the hands of this influx of migrants. If a state of emergency is passed slowly, we will see a mass amount of famine in our states. Food, just like shelter, is not in abundance. Stores buy according to need. Otherwise, it would not be economical. This documentary only briefly describes what is happening to our country. Americans have mixed feelings about migrants, but we must put those differences aside to devise a solution. This is the problem of the world today.
Tens of thousands of unaccompanied migrant children are now unaccounted for. The U.S. releasing them to unvetted sponsors. But these are not host families. Ballard says this is the last leg of sex trafficking between the cartels and within America's own borders.
Nation actually witnessing this firsthand at the Texas border in March.
Basically instructions on where he wants to go.
Children being sent to the border alone should be a red flag. As if the migrant situation in the United States is not enough. The United States is seeing an influx of migrant children coming to the border with pieces of paper with phone numbers. The United States is calling to confirm that these people are waiting for a child and appointing them as guardians. In many cases, 30 days after dropping these children off, the guardians and the children disappear. The Border Patrol in the United States should never hand over a child to people who have not been vetted. Is the United States unknowingly becoming the mule for sex trafficking minors? Where are these thousands of children now? The migrant issue is chaotic. It's time to ask how immigrants were vetted at places similar to Ellis Island. We need a plan. Everything must stop and we must decide how to handle the migrants we already have. Many residents believe we are not doing enough. The United States has always been a place for asylum, but now it appears we are either truly overwhelmed or do not have the capacity to accept any more asylum seekers. Unfortunately, we have been placed in this situation where we must choose between doing the right thing or protecting ourselves from crisis. During the institution of Title 42, the previous administration must have foreseen famine and medical issues in other countries would cause harm to the United States if actions weren't taken. Accepting migrants at such a large volume is hazardous. Many immigrants have died attempting to make impossible journeys to the United States because of the expiration of Title 42. How many migrants would still be alive if not for the opening of the border for asylum seekers?
Governor Greg Abbott is now calling for more buses to relocate asylum seekers to Democratic-run cities. Manuel Bajorquez has more from El Paso, Texas.
La verdad, ya por el tema de la inseguridad, ¿sabe?
Fleeing violence, the young couple left Venezuela for Peru, but with no steady work there. In July, Vilker, Kayla, and their 10-year-old son made the month-long torturous trek north and crossed into Texas. ¿Están bien con ustedes?
En todo momento.
Excelente. The couple remains thankful to U.S. Border Patrol officials who granted them temporary legal asylum.
These people cross sometimes 7, 8, 10 countries to get here.
Jesus Aguaiz is the executive director of Aid for Life International, a nonprofit that helps asylum seekers with health care and housing needs.
We want one thing and one thing only, that everyone is welcome and treated with dignity in New York City.
But the couple says it was different in Texas. They say they were approached by people claiming to be from Catholic organizations who insisted the family board a bus to Chicago, where the government might take their child.
Aid for Life International gave out donated clothing and shoes to men, women, children, and babies at St. Teresa Church. They also provided information about health care, legal counsel, housing, and more. Some migrants made the journey to get here on top of trains or while pregnant.
We go through a tremendous amount of trauma that we cannot even imagine.
Yes, I regret moving to the U.S.
4 months ago, this 19-year-old Venezuelan migrant arrived in Washington on one of the initial 120 buses sent by Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott. Rosa, which is not her real name, told VOA about her plans.
Work, start fulfilling my dreams, my goals that I have here.
Rosa and her partner's journey to reach the United States was difficult. 4 times during their migration, Rosa thought she was going to lose her baby. The couple crossed the mountainous and dangerous Darien Gap jungle in Colombia. and then 9 countries to face a complex immigration process in the United States.
It's not what I thought. The lawyer charges you $10,000 to work with you on an asylum case, then 10 years to be able to leave the country. I don't have a passport. If you don't have a passport here, you're nobody.
They think this is the American dream, but it's a dream that, in reality, if something were to happen to me here, this dream was not worth it.
Yasmelis Rodriguez and her husband Edis arrived in New York City less than a month ago. They are among the thousands of newly arrived asylum seekers. We haven't been able to get a hotel here. They have us waiting. More than 300 people, maybe even 500 at the shelter. I don't know how many exactly. Even the bathrooms collapsed due to the number of people because there is just no space. But they give us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Their journey to the U.S.-Mexico border lasted 42 days. They traveled by foot, going from country to country, navigating a dangerous jungle, rivers, witnessing death, and at points experiencing the worst in humanity. The jungle is something unimaginable. I can tell you or someone can listen to me, but you have to live it. They traveled from Venezuela to Colombia. From there, they crossed the treacherous Darien Gap, linking Colombia to Panama. The jungle is known as one of the world's most dangerous migrant routes, filled with wild animals and gang violence.
Concerns over the crisis at the border are intensifying as migrants surge across from Mexico. Sources say nearly 9,000 migrants were apprehended at the border in one single day. That's the highest number since May.
More than 142,000 migrant encounters reported in the first half of September alone, now on pace to match or surpass previous monthly highs this year.
We follow a group of friends from halfway across the world who are risking death by crossing this Colombian jungle. Paul and his friends are hoping to seek asylum in the US. But to get there, they're taking an extraordinary journey. First, they took connecting flights from West Africa to Ecuador, a country with some of the most relaxed visa laws in the world. From there, they took buses to get to northern Colombia. But now they've quite literally reached the end of the road. In order to get to the next country, Panama, they'll have to cross the notorious Darien Gap. It's a 100-mile stretch of dense swamp and jungle, with no roads and no rules. What we hear from others makes us fear the worst.
Il y a aussi des gens qui étaient en train de marcher, alors pour monter la montagne, il ne parvenait plus, alors il a tombé comme ça, la tête dans une pierre, donc il y a beaucoup de cadavres.
We meet Rose, who crossed the jungle with her grandson, 2 daughters and husband. She nearly drowned twice in the Darien's rivers.
Tema que mais aqui na Corramacas. Então chegou na bandico chola. Na mona que deja na cofina daqui desesperé. Na banai colocar Nzambe a sauver ngai. Pô na mona que deja na cofaki. Mas é vraiment désespéré. Não pensei plus jamais à ça là.
Let's take a look at some of this video right quick. These dramatic images at the border just a short time ago. You can see desperate migrants in the border town of Matamoros, Mexico, crossing the Rio Grande in the dark, some carrying young children, hoping to make it across to the U.S. On the other side there is Brownsville, Texas, where border agents are waiting.
To make an asylum claim, you must be physically present in the U.S. You can't start the process online or even at a U.S. embassy. Once a migrant claims asylum, the next step is what's called a credible fear interview. That's when an asylum officer decides whether a person merits going through the full asylum process.
Estamos pidiendo asilo para tener un mejor futuro, para un futuro para el bebé, para nosotros mismos también. Que tenga todo lo que un cubano no puede tener.
That is all that we've been advocating for, right? Allow people to apply for asylum. It doesn't mean they get to stay. It just means give them a chance to apply, and if they qualify, they get to stay. If they don't qualify, they may be deported. And Title 42 gets rid of all of that.
I'm not showing you the worst part of this photo, the upper half. It was literally the most horrific one I've seen today. Any reporters are interested, I'll show it to you. But we're not reporting on, we're not recognizing the human toll, the inhumanity of the Biden administration policies. This was a human being that we might have let in, welcomed in under a legal immigration system, but Biden's open border policy has pushed back the possibility of us standing up a functioning legal immigration system.
We're going to provide support, all the support that we can right now, but if it's only us and a handful of local nonprofits doing anything about it, that support is going to become insufficient very quickly.
During the research of this documentary, I didn't want to be just a storyteller or a clip editor. But this story is not just about sleeping on the curb. I don't want to discourage you. I want to give you some of the information to make informative decisions. This migrant issue is a mess, but living through the eyes of the individuals who risked their lives coming to the United States is a story we should count ourselves privileged to hear. If it were not for this influx of immigrants, many of us would not know what is happening in other parts of the world. To get a taste of freedom, people traveled through the jungles where wild animals killed many of them. They also had to walk through jungles that the cartel ran and hope that they weren't killed or taken to be sex trafficked. These stories are one of hope for the migrants, but when they got across the border, they encountered many who would rather send them back through the jungle than allow them entry into the United States. Many migrants were told of greatness in the United States, but once they were here, their eyes were opened. In the warmer southern states, these immigrants have a better chance of survival, but in the northern states, with the winter approaching, migrants will not survive outside. As the mayor of New York is beginning to see a way through this issue, Chicago is still trying to figure out a way to help these migrants. Unfortunately, due to the city's history, they are still in the process of rebuilding. States should share information using a developed government database accessible to the recent and past solutions for dealing with immigration issues. Rather than Democrats and Republicans pointing fingers, governors and mayors disagreeing, we need to get researchers on the ball working on resolving these issues. Southern states, even though they experience warmer temperatures, may not have the same challenge as northern states, but the fact is that we all must work together. Looking at this issue through the lens of inconvenience is the wrong attitude. Immigrants have been traveling to find better lives and escape violence since the stories told by the ancients. Human life is a life. Compassion and realistic solutions are the only reality these people have now. These people deserve our compassion after seeing death, hunger, disease, and horrific events traveling through the jungles. Even if we are unsure who these people are, we should treat them respectfully. The government should be vetting these people before allowing them into our lives, but how they are being shipped around on buses from other states means proper vetting techniques are not in place. We need to stop the influx of migrants, but we also must consider the ones en route. It's a miracle the many migrants traveling weren't killed. Walking 42 days in an American's life is unheard of. How bad is a migrant's current life that they would set out and risk their own lives to help their family members who were unable to make the journey? Many have left with no contact with their families. Imagine how much pain these people are in. Imagine the pain their loved ones at home are in, not knowing if they made the journey or have been killed. Let's stop fighting. Let's stop the divide.